It's that time of the day. It's really one of my favorite times because I just get to hear all this good shit coming my way. And the guy who is sharing the screen with me today has such an amazing impact on my life as a friend, as a guy who tried to hire me, as a guy who partnered with me in a bunch of businesses. And by the way, they have all failed. But I am super excited to have my friend from the North, Bob Snyder, the podcast king. And as he joined me this morning, I said, man, you got a pretty good setup. And what was your response?
I'm in the fucking podcast business. What do you expect?
Yeah, great. So welcome to the show. The format is friends and people who I love come on and share something good. So go, Bob Snyder, one of my dearest friends who I totally love. Share something good, brother.
Well, I'll tell you that you used a word that's not usually associated with good, but I think we are can testify that it can be, and that is failure. Right? Failure is always associated as bad and something wrong, and if you had to do it again, you'd do it differently. But you live long enough and you realize that without those points, you gain nothing. And there are very few people in life, very, very few, who, bounce around with just one success after another. The ones who have risen have checkered pasts. And
boy, do we have a checkered past.
But I wouldn't trade, you don't trade it for anything because it kind of makes up for the full, for the full plate of what you have to offer at this point in your life.
So we could take this interview a zillion different ways. I want to throw like some words at you, and then you tell me a story about that word. First word, OmniPoint.
The telecommunications business was what now is probably going to be sports gambling and things like that. I mean, it was just such a great opportunity, but you still had to have an in, and you had to be able to break through. And
I want you to specifically talk about when you brought a minor league hockey team to Miami, and I brought you a title sponsor.
Yeah.
With OmniPoint. So dig into that failure, if you will.
Yeah, no, but the truth is, when you drill down, that actually was a success. I mean, it was a sales at its essence, right? But it incorporated everything from relationships to old-fashioned sponsorships to activation. Before activation was really a big word. So yeah, I mean the opportunity was unique, and it was playing minor league hockey in South Florida, and that's not usually a recipe for success. But why not try to go after the Hispanic community in the middle of South Florida in February? I mean, they don't have anything else to do, so go to a hockey game. But here's the thing: there were so many great points along the way, from the work that we did together, being the face of a franchise that didn't exist, and that's really what I remember about the OmniPoint opportunity, was that you and I had a meeting in a hockey rink with a couple of executives, and all we had was air and the walls around us. There was no team, there was no nothing. And then, flash forward, I guess we have video here, since it's relatively handy.
Look at you. I love it. I love it.
This is what it's all about. This is the real deal. And that is,
dude, that is something so good. I got chills, man. You made my day.
Let me put that back in my accessories. So, and I look at that, and I think rousing success. It's wonderful.
Rousing success. Unbelievable. Okay, so I know the audience doesn't. I know that you had a very successful radio career, sports radio career, like before sports radio was sports radio. One of the things I loved about when I got the chance to meet you was your broad thinking, creatively activating messages. So, would you share with us stories about the little thing that went in the urinal?
Yeah. We're all fighting for attention. For the right reasons, a promotion of business and whatnot. And so nowadays it's sophisticated opportunities like this and StreamYard. But back then, back in the, I don't know, 70s, 80s, it was more of it was a street fight. And so if you were doing some of the things like I was, which was, running sports radio stations, trying to capture the attention and imagination of 25-year-old men, where are you going to reach these men, and how are you going to create an impression? And I thought, what better place than a urinal? And so I I mean, that's the way my mind works. So everybody's got to go. And so we the radio station, we made urinal cakes. And I don't remember exactly what it said on it, but
the fact that it's called a cake is the most bizarre thing ever.
I tell you what, I had a couple left over for a long time, and they keep their smell.
Awesome.
So, that was, I mean, and but there were other things I think that that people can relate to. When the radio station I was with lost the rights to the Redskins, and another entity was going to have it, another station was going to have it. You go into some guerrilla tactics. So we went into the stadium at the time, which was RFK, where the former Redskins played their home games, and all of the ushers, we realized they were a separate union. And so we dressed them all in the outfits for our radio station. And it said on the shirt, well, where you can get the real deal. Oh, did that piss people off? But it was great.
And so, what's really interesting about you is, first of all, you've always pushed the envelope. I love that about you. You're always thinking of new ways, and you've been on the front side or the early side of a couple of businesses that, had you launched them today or a year ago, would be explosive. Why don't you share with the audience the story about how you tried to hire me, because I think it's a great story, and then we'll flip right into what you're doing now, because the podcast business, while booming, I still think there's a lot of people that don't understand it.
Yeah. I wish it was a quicker curve, but it is what it is. The lesson I think both Steve and I learned together when I tracked them down was that creativity in every part of the game, and including hiring, is really a prerequisite. And when I ended up in South Florida for the first time, and really had only my corporate folks as allies, I was looking to build out first with with the revenue side of things. And with a sports radio background, I was limited to thinking about sports radio people and sports radio stations. And I called I just picked up the phone and I called the sales department, and I knew enough that they hold the keys in many ways. And I sweet talked my way into somebody's heart and said, "Hey, by the way, let me ask you this. If you had, somebody was going to give you a 2-week schedule, and you had to give it to one salesperson in your whole station that you would trust in every regard, who would that be?" And she thought for not very long. She goes, "Well, that would be Steve Noodleberg." I said, "Put him on the phone." I never talked to her again, but she gave me a hell of a tip.
And you know what? That tip, that idea, that creativity is so, you talked about a lot of great stuff already, but guerrilla tactics, thinking outside of the box. People use that term all the time, but yet never really get out of the box. They like to think about it. But that was a simple execution that put you and I together for a cup of coffee that changed the trajectory of both of our lives, good, bad, indifferent. But to your point, when we started, I wouldn't trade any of the stuff you and I have been through together. I mean, we have laughed, we have cried. God, it's been a life chock full of stuff that, you know, we're woven together, good or, you know, like it or not. Yeah. So we'll switch gears and we'll talk about what you're doing now, because you hit on something that I coach every single client about. It's about awareness. It's not, you know, it used to be when I would hire people, I would say, wow, you know a lot of people, you ought to do really well at this. It's not enough anymore. It's really more about who knows you. And so like, I want to have other people talking about me that don't know me. Podcasting is one way to do that. So can you give us the name of your business, what you're doing, and sort of your unique brain about the podcasting world?
Sure. So the name of the business is Hometown Podcasts. And the purpose is publishing, primary purpose is publishing podcasts. And publishing is a print term, but that's the term that podcasting adopted years ago. And so I publish podcasts. Behind that, you know, there are a couple of purposes. I have been in the entertainment business, the audio entertainment business for 40 years. So I can't deny the fact that there's still, you know, an element of entertainment involved in everything. But there's also a form of communication, and it's a, you know, take some of the guerrilla tactics we talk about, fast forward 40 years, and you have the ability to provide real content, whatever that content is. It absolutely doesn't matter. It can be a conversation about a sewing class. It can be moving tributes to people. It can be interviews. It can be educational sessions, whatever it is. But because you can put it out there and allow folks to get it how they want and when they want, it takes all the things that I have done in the past, like radio, which was when the producer wanted how I wanted. That doesn't work anymore. You put stuff up there and it's a big library. You know, I live in Boston, where it's one of the biggest libraries, the Boston Public Library. And all you do is you take that and you put it up in the sky, and there are all the podcasts for anybody to pull off the shelf at any time. But the key is, it's when they want, in the device that they want, wherever they want. And if you can play that game or figure out how to get into that game, which you, Mr. Noodleberg, I know have, then it can be really effective. And all of these tools, because they're somewhat long form, you can say a lot.
So that was incredibly well said. How you want it, where you want it is really the whole point, is that we really are a society like that's really an information vacuum, where the machine never turns off. People just want more and more content. So how you serve it up and what your particular likes or desires are. So I know that one of the productions that you do, and I want you to delve in a little bit to how people can do their own and how maybe they can work with you and your company. But one of the things you do is around the cannabis space, and the stories you tell and the things that you're able to publish. I love it. Why don't you share the story?
This is my alter ego. His name is Cliff. And when we do the cannabis show, I go into my Cliff mode.
So what's the name of the show?
The name? Well, you know, the thing is, you take a couple of brands and you put them together. That cannabis as an industry and a brand is wonderful. And I was lucky enough that one of the biggest cannabis companies in the world, Curaleaf, is here in Massachusetts. So that was my omni point, right? And so Curaleaf is now paired with a local television icon here in New England, Bob Lobel. And, next thing you know, you got Curaleaf Cannabis, Bob Lobel, a couple of guests. Last night we had on like the decade-long strain expert from High Times magazine. The week before that, it was the Attorney General of Massachusetts. But it is great fun, educational, entertainment, all the things that I was talking about. We recorded one last night, and based on the way podcasts work, there'll be hundreds of people who will listen to it next year at this time. It's just, just the way it works. No immediate satisfaction.
But chunking out that real estate, the barrier to entry is zero. It's, if you have the will to do it, you're willing to put yourself out here. The cost of equipment is not tremendous, but a lot of people don't know how to do it. So tell my audience what services you provide, how they may be able to access you, because I trust you with, my whole life. So, and always have. If somebody is watching this that says, hey, I'm interested in doing something, how can Bob Snyder help them?
Yeah, I mean, what's happening, broader than me even is that companies are just simply figuring out that in the same way they might have a website that is an important part of their platform, that in a way they can, and that of course is for the eyes. Well, they can do the same type of thing for the ears and create a platform where there's always a wealth of information. So I go back and I review your roster of guests on this particular show, and it may be something that you did 6 months ago that catches my attention. So companies are realizing that the podcasting is all around them. They keep hearing about it. How do I take advantage of it? Then big companies started getting a lot of acceptance. Trader Joe's of all companies put out does put out a tremendous podcast about the culture of being Trader Joe's. And that is the company DraftKings now has a podcast about what it's like to work at DraftKings. They use it as a hiring technique.
Wow, that's fabulous.
Right? I mean, okay. So I know a company based out of Chicago that it's a nationwide company. Their sales force is, of course, mobile all around the country. And instead of holding sales meetings, they kind of put the meeting on a podcast and let the the sales folks. So it's that you would say, well, that's sort of like a private podcast. Nothing's really private, but yes, it is meant to be for a community. The community may be internal. It may be a community around the business. It may be a geographical community, but it's meant for a community. I happen to do a lot of shows that are locally based. So designed for Boston. Bob Ryan is a national figure, but he does Bob Ryan's Boston podcast. I'd rather have a more concentrated group, in that regard. So the folks are getting real creative with this space, and it's fun to watch. And that's what I do. I help companies get into the podcast space.
So is it just companies, to clarify, is there individuals that are interested? Because I obviously have a list of companies I can share that would probably want to do that. But if somebody's watching and they want to do their own, is that a potential conversation you want to have?
Yeah, I would think it would be if it's on their own, but they are established. I mean, there's still an expense to it, and at least the way we do ours, like a lot of your stuff here, it's very professional looking. We have editors in one city and feeds coming in from different places. So yeah, I mean, if you do it right, if an individual, I know somebody who's retired in the finance world, and he's got money. It's not a question of that. He just wants a platform. He wants to stay relevant. So yeah, whether you're retired or just starting, if you're wise enough to see the value of a website, you might see the value of a podcast as well.
That's a really good connection there. Like people just inherently go to, think, oh, I need a website. but a website's one-dimensional. A podcast, the content that I put out there has attracted a lot of new people into my world. And what I realized was that I'm not only producing content, I'm a distribution channel. I'm pushing stuff out there to attract people. I become the magnet. So that's really well said. So we got a couple minutes left. I want to talk about you personally. This has been a crazy time for everybody. What's interesting, I listened to Simon Sinek the other day. I got invited into a podcast that sort of interview that he was doing. And he said, it's interesting. Everybody everybody's talking about like these like weird times and how there's nothing definitive, about what's happening now. And he was like, when was it ever definitive? When did you know what was happening in the future before? So I found that to be really interesting. But as it pertains to you and your life, what have you learned about yourself? What new habits? What has the pandemic done that has kept you looking like the spry human being you are?
It's strange. You work hard to try to create certain circumstances and certain environments, and you realize you control nothing, right? From the outside, and then you just do the best you can. And then and that's happened, and it's felt like it's happened, and the tide has been going the wrong way. And if only, circumstances were a little different. And then, here comes a pandemic that literally brings a world, to a halt. And what happened was, in a way, I got a little fortunate because, as I said earlier, I'm in the content and entertainment game. And what do folks really want right now? That's the only thing they can absorb is digital content and entertainment. So as I'm knocking out shows about weed, or today I'm working on, I've got a vet here in Boston that does a show called Tales from the City, and he talks about.
Cool. I like that. That's cool.
Yeah, he talks about his practice, and it's business that folks are absorbing now, and so I would have never predicted it, but like Zoom, the Zoom technology is working for podcasts and allowing folks to record in ways that they never thought they would do. StreamYard is another one. Did I pronounce that right? StreamYard?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and so what really happened over the last couple of months is this odd feeling like I'm catching a break. And you don't want to feel that way. It's like driving around with no traffic. You say, this is great, but back in your mind, you say, no, this isn't right. There's no one in New York City. It ain't right.
But what's interesting about that, and I mean this sincerely, the whole glass half full, glass half empty, you live your whole life, and if you're looking on the bright side of stuff, you take what the advantages are no matter what. I mean, that's always been a mantra. This one's a bit more severe, but if you listen to the news, you're incapable of doing anything. It's total, you'd think that everything is shut down and nothing's happening. That's not the case. There's a gigantic shift in how things are being done, who's doing them, how people are consuming information, so I'm happy for you, man. That's really cool. This has been amazing spending time with you. Any last word of tell me something good? You always have these unique little, quips.
I've learned from all the folks that have gone on my shows over the years that if you don't learn to pump something, that you're an idiot. So I'm gonna pump a new venture. This actually has to do a lot with just adapting and creating entertainment content. This is something that's going to come out shortly with a longtime friend, New York Times bestseller author John Feinstein. It's called The Friends That I've Made. It's an audio book. And the tag is a unique audio from the incomparable perspective of multiple New York Times bestselling author John Feinstein, in his own voice and through 5 intimate conversations with prominent sports figures who John has covered, followed, and now considers friends. and the 5 people that we were finished recording last week in Washington, and it was fabulous. Michigan basketball coach Tom Izzo, David Faraday, Golden State Warriors head coach Steve Kerr, Mary Carrillo, and Mike Krzyzewski. And it was awesome. And so this will be a first foray into into providing folks what they want, when they want, how they want, but with a price tag. We'll see.
I love it because, I've always been a fan of investing in yourself, and there should be more, in my mind, where people put skin in the game, because when they pay for it, the likelihood of actually digesting it goes up. When it's so much free, it's like the buffet. Ugh, how much can you really eat? So congratulations. You
will love this, by the way. I got to tell you, knowing that this was on my calendar and having just recorded over the last couple of weeks, you will love the stories, the inspiration, the motivation from these 5 people. And look, John Feinstein is as good as it gets in both television, radio, and print journalism. His Q&A with these folks was unbelievable. It feels like every 5 minutes you could take a clip and promote it. So I'm looking forward to that. But I do think that everything you do, your complimentary book is on its way.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. This has been a blast. I'm going to post this with all the information so that people can get in touch with you. I'm glad we did this because now I have 3 or 4 people I want you to meet who have those kind of opportunities for an audiobook. They have done interviews, but they're not together. I mean, collections is the new future, man. You are the best. I love you. Can't wait till we can go to a New England Jet game.
Peace out, buddy.
Love you.
All right. We'll talk, Steve.